The sun was slowly moving down the Arizona sky when Daniel drove his dusty old truck along the long, empty desert road. He was a traveling mechanic, a man who had spent years moving from one small town to another, fixing engines, repairing machines, and helping people who had no one else to call. He never planned this life, it simply happened. After a difficult chapter in his past, he preferred silence, open spaces, and work that used his hands instead of his heart. That evening, the desert air was warm, and the horizon glowed orange and red. The road ahead was quiet, except for the soft hum of Daniel's engine. He enjoyed moments like this, simple, peaceful, and without stress. But peace in the desert never lasted long. Soon, he noticed a thin line of smoke rising in the distance. At first, he thought it was dust, but as he got closer, he realized it came from an overheated pickup truck stopped on the side of the road. The hood was open, and steam slowly floated upward like a weak cloud. Standing near the truck was a woman. She stood tall, her posture strong, and her expression sharp. She had long dark hair tied behind her back and wore simple travel clothes that matched the desert tones around her. The moment Daniel saw her, he realized she was from the Apache community. Her features, her posture, her calm but firm stance, everything reflected her heritage. Daniel slowed down and pulled over. He never ignored someone who might need help. He stepped out and gave a polite nod. Evening. Need assistance? The woman looked at him carefully, as if measuring whether he could be trusted or not. She did not show fear, only caution. My truck overheated, she said in a steady voice. It died suddenly. I don't know what happened. Daniel walked closer, keeping his movements calm. I'm a mechanic. I can take a look if you want. She hesitated for a moment. She was clearly used to dealing with things on her own and probably did not trust strangers easily. But after a few seconds, she stepped aside and gave him space. All right, she said. You can try. Daniel lifted the hood properly and leaned in. Hot air hit his face, and he coughed softly before examining the engine. The coolant line was cracked, and the radiator had lost pressure. The entire system was close to failing. It was not a small problem, and not something a casual driver could fix. He grabbed his toolbox, opened it, and searched for the right wrench. The heat made sweat gather on his forehead, but he ignored it. He wiped his hands, tightened the worn cloth on his wrist, and began working carefully. While he worked, the woman watched silently. Her eyes followed every movement, her face unreadable. Daniel could feel her gaze, but he kept his focus. He knew people rarely trusted quickly in these lands. Respect had to be earned, not asked for. After several minutes of examination, he made a small adjustment, twisted a bolt, and pulled out one of his old tools to loosen a stuck connector. It required strength and experience, something Daniel had plenty of. The woman finally asked, You do this often? Helping strangers on empty roads? Daniel gave a small smile. I suppose so. Roads like this aren't easy. Engines break. People get stuck. Someone has to stop. She tilted her head slightly, as if reevaluating him. You're not from around here. No, he replied. I travel. Fix engines. Move on. There was no pride in his voice, only honesty. As Daniel worked, he noticed something unusual. A stubborn bolt on the cooling chamber refused to move. He wiped his palms, adjusted his grip, and used his old wrench, the same tool he had used for years. Twisting it firmly until the bolt finally gave way with a loud click, he quickly adjusted the coolant line, tightened 2 more bolts, reattached the cracked section temporarily so the truck could at least move again. The woman's eyes widened slightly. That tool still works after using it twice. That's impossible. Her tone was not insulting. It was shocked, almost impressed. She looked genuinely surprised that his old worn tool still functioned with such power. Daniel chuckled softly. I take care of it. It's old, but reliable. The woman blinked, then crossed her arms. You fixed 2 stuck bolts in a row with that old thing. Even our mechanic back home struggles with them. How did you do it? Daniel shrugged lightly. Experience. And maybe a bit of luck. For the first time since he arrived, the woman softened. Her expression relaxed and a small smile appeared. It wasn't wide or bright, but it was real. "My name is Ayana," she introduced herself. "I'm from the Apache community nearby." "Nice to meet you," Daniel replied politely. "I'm Daniel," she nodded. "You work quietly. Most people talk too much when they try to help." Daniel laughed softly. "I guess I'm not most people." Ayana watched his hands strong, steady, confident as he tightened the last bolt. She saw that he did not rush, did not cut corners, and did not show off. He simply worked with focus. "You're good at this," she said, almost reluctantly. "Better than I expected." Daniel did not take it as a compliment against others. He simply said, "Thank you." When he stood up, he wiped his hands again and closed his toolbox. The desert wind passed between them softly, carrying the warm smell of sand and dry brush. Ayana looked at the engine. "Will it work?" "It will get you to your community," Daniel replied. "But the truck needs a proper repair. This is only temporary." "Your radiator is damaged." Ayana exhaled slowly. "I was heading home to deliver supplies. If the truck died in the middle of nowhere, it would have caused problems." Daniel nodded. "Well, you're good to go now. Just drive slow. Keep the engine cool." Ayana hesitated again. She looked at him, then at her truck, then back at him. "You could." "Come with me," she said carefully. "I mean, only if you want to. Our mechanic can help, but he might need a second opinion. You understand engines better than anyone I've met." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "Some communities prefer not to bring outsiders inside." Ayana held his gaze. "You helped me when you didn't have to. You worked hard without asking anything in return. I don't offer this invitation often. But today, I think you should come." Daniel was quiet for a moment. He did not want to disrespect her offer. He also did not want to assume anything. But her voice held sincerity, not just politeness. "All right," he said finally. "I'll follow your truck." Ayana gave another small smile. "Good, stay close. The road can get rough." They both got into their vehicles. Ayana started her truck, tested the controls, and looked relieved when it ran smoothly. Daniel drove behind her, keeping a safe distance, but following closely. As they moved deeper into Apache land, the desert changed. The air felt different, calmer, more sacred. The landscape grew richer with tall grasses and old stone formations shaped by centuries of wind. Daniel felt he was entering a place with history far older than him. Ayana looked at him occasionally through the mirror, checking if he was still following. Daniel stayed steady, his truck rolling smoothly over the dusty path. After some miles, the road curved into a valley where a small Apache settlement stood. Wooden homes, traditional huts, and modern structures blended together. Children played in open areas. Elders sat outside discussing the day, and the entire place felt peaceful but strong. Ayana parked her truck near a workshop where tools hung neatly on the walls. Daniel parked beside her. "You can meet our mechanic," she said. "He'll want to see what you did." Daniel nodded. "Lead the way." As they walked through the settlement, people stared quietly. Not out of hostility, just curiosity. Outsiders rarely entered unless invited. Ayana walked confidently beside him, signaling to everyone that he was not a stranger to be feared. Inside the workshop, the local mechanic approached, an older man with wise eyes and steady hands. Ayana explained the problem, and Daniel listened respectfully. Adding details only when needed, the mechanic tested the engine, checked Daniel's temporary repair, and finally looked up with a thoughtful expression. "You did good work," the old mechanic said. "You saved her a long walk?" Daniel simply nodded. "Just doing what I can." Ayana watched both men, noticing how Daniel remained humble and respectful throughout. She appreciated that. Many people bragged or tried to prove themselves. Daniel did not. He worked quietly and let his actions speak. When they stepped outside again, the sun had almost set. The sky glowed purple and pink, coloring the entire valley beautifully. Ayana looked at Daniel with a gentler expression than before. "You didn't have to help," she said softly, "but you did. And you stayed kind. That means something." Daniel met her gaze, calm and sincere. I'm glad I could help. The first quiet connection formed right there, unexpected, simple, and honest. Ayanna motioned toward the settlement. If you want, you can stay for the evening meal. As a thank you, Daniel thought for a moment, then nodded. I'd like that. So without planning it, his simple act on the desert road opened the door to a new story he never expected. Daniel stayed close behind Ayanna as she led him toward the center of the Apache settlement. The sky above was turning darker with each step, and small lanterns began to glow around the homes, creating a warm and peaceful light. Children ran past them, laughing softly, and the sound of drums echoed faintly from a distant gathering area. Ayanna walked with a quiet confidence, her presence respected by everyone around her. Daniel noticed how people greeted her with nods or gentle smiles. She returned each gesture politely, but her eyes kept shifting toward Daniel from time to time, checking if he was still comfortable. This way, she said, stopping near a shaded outdoor area where several wooden tables were placed. The smell of warm food filled the air: corn soup, fry bread, roasted vegetables, and herbs Daniel could not identify but found comforting. Many families were gathered there, eating and speaking in calm tones. When Ayanna walked in, people turned their heads curiously. An outsider eating with them was unusual, but because Ayanna had brought him, they behaved respectfully. Ayanna signaled Daniel to sit beside her at an empty table. You're our guest, she said. You helped me today? This is the least I can do. Daniel nodded. Thank you. It means a lot. He sat down carefully. He did not want to appear too forward or too hesitant. He simply tried to blend in respectfully. A young girl approached them with bowls of soup. She smiled shyly at Daniel before placing the bowls down. Thank you, Daniel said kindly. The girl looked up at Ayanna, then whispered, Is he the one who fixed your truck? Ayanna gave a small smile. Yes, he helped when the engine stopped working. The girl looked impressed and hurried back to her family. Daniel ate slowly, savoring the warm meal. He had eaten alone on the road for months: dry snacks, quick meals, nothing fresh. This food tasted real, simple, and comforting. Ayanna watched him with quiet amusement. You eat like someone who hasn't had a good meal in a long time. Daniel chuckled softly, not embarrassed. That might be true. Ayanna nodded slightly. Food made with care always feels different. They ate in calm silence for a while. Around them, families laughed, elders shared stories, and children played under the lantern lights. The atmosphere felt safe, something Daniel had not felt in a very long time. After the meal, an older woman approached their table. She wore traditional clothing with beautiful beadwork, and her eyes held wisdom and kindness. She looked at Daniel with curiosity before turning to Ayanna. This man, you brought him inside our home area? The woman asked. Ayanna answered respectfully. Yes, grandmother. He helped me on the road. Without him, I might have been stuck for hours. The older woman studied Daniel for several long seconds. Daniel kept his posture polite and steady. He knew respect mattered deeply here. Finally, the elder nodded with approval. You have good hands, she said to him. Hands that fix things. Not everyone uses their hands to help. That matters. Daniel bowed his head slightly. Thank you, ma'am. The woman gave a satisfied nod before walking away. Ayanna leaned closer and whispered, If she approves of you, then you're truly welcome here.
Oh.
Daniel smiled softly. I'm glad. After dinner, Ayanna led him toward the workshop again. The evening air had grown cooler, and stars filled the sky above them. The workshop lights were still on, and the old mechanic was cleaning his tools. He looked up when they entered. Good timing, he said. I checked the truck again. Your temporary repair worked better than I expected. Daniel walked over. Can I see? The old mechanic handed him a small flashlight. Go ahead. Daniel inspected the engine while the mechanic stood beside him. After a few minutes, Daniel spoke softly. The radiator needs replacement. The coolant line needs welding, and the pump might be next to fail. The mechanic nodded. That's what I thought. I can fix some things, but we don't have the right part for the radiator. Daniel rubbed his chin. I have a spare in my truck. It's old, but it should fit. Mechanic raised an eyebrow. You carry radiators in your truck? Daniel shrugged. I carry many things. You never know what someone might need. Ayanna laughed softly, surprising both men. You really do prepare for everything. Daniel smiled. Maybe. He went to his truck, lifted the back cover, and pulled out an old but usable radiator. Ayanna watched with genuine astonishment. You were carrying that this whole time? She asked. Daniel nodded. I fix a lot of vehicles. I bring parts that can help in emergencies. Ayanna shook her head, amused. You carry more things than most people I know. Daniel chuckled. It's part of the job. They returned to the workshop. The mechanic prepared tools while Daniel positioned the radiator. They worked together as Zilla Daniel handing tools, the old man adjusting parts. And Ayanna holding lights when needed. The three of them formed a small team without planning it. After an hour, the old mechanic wiped his forehead and stepped back. That should hold. Good work. Daniel cleaned his hands and looked at Ayanna. Your truck should be ready in the morning. Ayanna stared at the engine, shocked at how quickly everything had been repaired. You fixed the worst part already, and you didn't even hesitate. Daniel shrugged again. Helping someone in trouble is normal for me. Ayanna looked at him quietly for a moment. You helped me so much today. You didn't ask anything in return. You didn't complain. You didn't try to impress anyone. You just worked. Daniel didn't know how to respond at first. Her voice carried sincerity, not flattery. It's how I was raised, he finally said. If someone needs help, you help them. Ayanna's eyes softened. Not many people think like that. The old mechanic stepped forward and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. You have a good spirit. Our community respects people who use their skills with honesty. Daniel bowed his head. Thank you. Ayanna seemed thoughtful as she looked toward the night sky. You can rest here tonight, she said. We have a guest house near the workshop. It is simple but comfortable. Daniel opened his mouth to protest. He didn't want to burden anyone. But Ayanna held up a hand gently, stopping him. You helped me today, she said. This is not charity. It is respect. Daniel understood that refusing would be rude, so he accepted with a grateful nod. As they walked toward the small guest house, Ayanna walked beside him quietly. The desert wind brushed past them, and the sound of distant drums grew softer. Blending with the night, I want to ask you something, she said after a long pause. Go ahead, Daniel replied. Why do you travel alone? She asked simply. Daniel took a deep breath. He had not expected that question. He looked at the ground, thinking before answering. I used to stay in one place, he said slowly, but life changed. People moved on. Some things ended. So I began driving. One town to another, fixing things. Helping where I can. Ayanna listened without interrupting. Daniel added, traveling keeps my mind calm, and helping people makes the journey meaningful. Ayanna nodded thoughtfully. That sounds lonely, but peaceful at the same time. Daniel smiled faintly. Yes, that's a good way to put it. They reached the guest house, a small but clean building with a soft lantern glowing inside. Ayanna opened the door for him. You can rest here. If you need anything, I'll be nearby. Daniel stepped inside. The room smelled of cedar wood and fresh air. A comfortable bed sat in the corner, and a woven blanket lay folded neatly on top. There was a small table, a chair, and a clay jar filled with water. It was simple. But to Daniel it felt warm and sincere. He turned to Ayanna. Thank you, truly. Ayanna met his eyes. Her expression was softer now, no longer guarded or distant. You earned this, she said. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Ayanna. She stepped back, closed the door gently, and walked into the night. Daniel sat on the bed and exhaled deeply. He had expected this to be another simple repair on another lonely road, but instead he had found a community that welcomed him, a woman he respected, in a day that felt strangely important, somewhere deep inside. He sensed that this connection, however new, was going to change something in his life. For the first time in months, Daniel fell asleep peacefully. Daniel woke early the next morning. Soft light entered the guest house through the small window, painting gentle colors across the wooden floor. The air was cool and calm, carrying the faint smell of sage from the open fields beyond the settlement. He sat up slowly and stretched his arms. For a few quiet moments, he listened to the peaceful sounds outside, the soft call of birds, distant footsteps, and the low murmur of morning greetings exchanged among the community. Everything felt calm, organized, and full of purpose. It was a rare feeling for him, and he appreciated it more than he expected. After washing up, he stepped outside. The sky was pale blue, and small clouds drifted slowly across it. Several children were already playing near the workshop, and when they saw him, they waved shyly. "Good morning," one boy called. Daniel smiled and lifted a hand. "Morning." As he walked toward the workshop, he noticed Ayanna approaching from the opposite side. She wore simple, traditional clothes and carried a woven basket with herbs, tools, and a folded cloth inside. For a moment, she simply walked quietly, but when she saw Daniel, her expression softened. "You wake up early," she said. "Old habit," Daniel replied with a smile. "Does the truck need any more work?" Ayanna shook her head lightly. Our mechanic checked it again. "Everything looks good. You did more than anyone expected." Daniel nodded. "I'm glad." She looked at him for a long moment, as if wanting to say something but choosing her words carefully. "You're leaving today?" she asked. Daniel took a slow breath. He knew the question was coming. He also knew he couldn't stay forever. His life was on the road until now. He believed it had to be. "I will leave soon," he said softly. "I don't want to stay longer than I should." Ayanna did not look disappointed or angry. Instead, she looked thoughtful. "Before you leave," she said, "you should see something." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "Come," she said gently. "I want to show you." He followed her along a small path behind the settlement. The path led through short grass, past old trees, and toward a wide open area where the land sloped upward into a low hill. As they climbed, Daniel noticed carvings on rocks, symbols painted long ago, and sacred stones placed carefully in patterns that told history only the Apache understood. When they reached the top, Daniel stopped. The view was breathtaking. Below them, the entire valley spread out green patches, sandy edges, small homes, the workshop, and the people beginning their day. The rising sun painted the land in gold, making everything glow. Ayanna stood beside him, her expression calm but filled with something deeper. "This place," she said softly, "is where my father used to bring me. He would stand here and tell me stories about our people. He said this land remembers every kindness and every wrong." Daniel nodded respectfully. He could feel the weight of the place, the history held quietly by the earth. Ayanna continued. "When my father passed, I kept coming here. It helped me stay strong." Daniel turned to her gently. "You're already very strong, Ayanna." She looked down at the valley, then at him. "You helped me yesterday. But it wasn't only the truck." She paused. "You reminded me that there are still people in this world who help without expecting anything." Daniel said nothing. He didn't know what to say without sounding too heavy. Ayanna stepped closer. "You worked with honesty. You respected our land. You treated our people with kindness. That matters here, more than you know." Daniel looked at the ground, then back at her. "I didn't do anything special. I only did what felt right." Ayanna shook her head. "Doing what is right is special." They stood in silence for a moment, letting the warm morning breeze pass around them. The land below looked peaceful, but Daniel knew life here wasn't always easy. They worked hard, protected each other, and carried traditions with great responsibility. Ayanna looked at Daniel again. "There is something else," she said quietly. "When you leave, I want you to remember that you will always be welcome here. You helped me in a difficult moment. You helped our community. We don't forget things like that." Daniel felt something shift gently inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. "Belonging, respect, connection. I appreciate that," he said sincerely. "More than I can say," Ayanna nodded, her eyes warm. After a moment, she motioned for him to walk back with her. They returned to the settlement, where the mechanic waited. The old man stood beside the newly repaired truck, looking proud. "It runs like a new one," the mechanic said. "Your hands did good work," Daniel nodded. "Glad it helped." Ayana walked up to the truck and placed her hand on the hood. "It hasn't sounded this strong in years." Daniel smiled slightly. Then it was worth the effort. Before he could say anything else, Ayana reached into the woven basket she carried. She pulled out a small bracelet, carefully made with beads in warm earth colors: brown, beige, red, and soft blue. She held it out to him. "This is for you," she said quietly, "a symbol of gratitude and respect." Daniel hesitated. The bracelet was not just a simple gift. It carried meaning, something deeper, something special. "Ayana, I can't take something this important," he said softly. "You can," she replied gently, "because you earned it." Daniel realized refusing would show disrespect. So he accepted the bracelet with both hands, just as she offered it. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady but touched. Ayana nodded. "Wear it when you travel. It will remind you that you have a place where people are glad you came." The word stayed with him. Daniel tied the bracelet around his wrist. The beads felt light, but the meaning behind them felt heavy in a good way. The mechanic stepped forward and shook Daniel's hand firmly. "If you ever come back this way, you stop here first. Don't pass us by." "I won't," Daniel promised. Ayana looked at him again, her expression calm but holding a quiet sadness mixed with pride. "You should start your journey," she said softly. "The road waits for no one." Daniel nodded slowly. He walked to his truck, opened the door, and placed his tools inside. For a moment, he just stood there, looking at the community, the people, the land, the morning light. Then he looked at Ayana. "I'll remember this place," he said. "And we will remember you," she replied. Daniel climbed into his truck, started the engine, and gave one last nod to Ayana and the mechanic. The sound of the engine filled the quiet morning, and slowly he began driving toward the road. Ayana watched him leave. She did not wave, but stood tall and steady, her presence strong as ever. Daniel saw her in the mirror, still standing there, still watching, until the road curved and she disappeared from view. The desert stretched ahead, endless and open, but Daniel felt different now. The loneliness he carried for so long felt lighter. The bracelet on his wrist reminded him he had made a connection, one built on trust, respect, and kindness. He drove 4 miles without speaking a word, letting the warm wind fill the cab of his truck. Eventually, a small smile appeared on his face. Quiet, genuine, yet rare. He whispered to himself, that wasn't just a simple repair. It was something more, deep in the Apache Valley behind him. Ayana stood on the hill, looking at the trail of dust his truck left behind. Knowing the same thing, their paths had crossed by chance, but the respect they built was something neither would forget.